Hello, welcome to Module 5, Understand Your Audience. As with all self-paced material, we recommend to pause the video or feel free to go back to a certain concept if you're not clear about it. With that being said, let's get started.
Let's start with a quick overview of the lesson. So this lesson has two key objectives. The first one is to define audience analysis and audience segmentation, and the second one is to explain how to conduct audience analysis and segmentation. Before we look into the definitions of audience analysis and segmentation, I would like to share some of the key messages of this lesson with you that you should remember. First, audience analysis and segmentation are critical for effective risk communication. This is because they allow you to develop targeted activities, materials, and messages, and select the most appropriate communication channels for your target audience. This will really help ensure that the risk information you share is understood, trusted, and acted upon. Now that we've gone through the key messages of this lesson, we can finally delve into the definition of audience analysis. According to the Health Communication Collaborative, audience analysis is the process used to explore and identify priority and influential audiences of a risk communication initiative. Audience analysis also allows you to gain an in-depth understanding of your audience's characteristics, needs, values, aspirations, and behaviors. More information on the difference between priority and influential audiences will be given later on in the lesson. We've established that audience analysis is about exploring and identifying priority and influential audiences. But what is audience segmentation? What does it entail? According to the Health Communication Capacity Collaborative, audience segmentation is the process of dividing an audience into smaller groups based on similar characteristics, such as needs, wants, behaviors, values, etc. It is a critical component of audience analysis. We will go into more detail about how to conduct audience segmentation a bit later on in the lesson. Now that you know the definitions of audience analysis and audience segmentation, we can look at the steps for effective audience analysis. There are 9 steps. Let me just show you what these 9 steps are. The first step is identifying potential audiences. The second step is selecting the priority audience. The third step is identifying the characteristics of the priority audience. The fourth step is identifying knowledge, attitudes, and practices. Step 5 consists of identifying barriers and facilitators. Step 6 is about considering audience segmentation. Step 7 is identifying your influencing audiences. Step 8 is organizing influencing audience information. And the final step is developing an audience profile. So now let's go through them one by one. Step 1. Identify potential audiences. After conducting the situation analysis, you need to think about and list down all the potential audiences that are affected by or have control over the situation that you are trying to address. This list is critical for step 2, where you will be selecting your priority audience. Step 2. Select the priority audience. For a risk communication plan to be successful, you can't target all possible audiences. That is neither possible nor feasible. Rather, you want to target the audience or audiences whose behaviors are the most crucial to change to help the situation that you want to address. These audiences, who will become the target of your disaster risk communication plan, are called priority audiences. For example, after a flood, displaced people are provided with shelter in a refugee camp. Even with food distributions, children remain severely malnourished. A needs assessment is conducted and shows that mothers aren't able to feed their children properly because their husbands are taking the food and selling it on the market. Although children are the most affected by malnutrition, and mothers are the primary caregivers who feed them, targeting the husbands in a communication response would have the most impact, as it would encourage them to use the distributed food properly to keep their children healthy. The husbands are therefore the priority audience in this case. The priority audience should be identified based on the situation analysis and, if applicable, rapid needs assessments. Try to use primary and secondary data, as this will enable you to have an evidence-based selection of priority and influencing audiences. Some basic questions that can help you identify priority audiences include: which groups are at risk? Which groups are indirectly involved? Are there groups who are looked at for advice or direction? Are there vulnerable or high-risk groups that need to be targeted? Step 3. Identify the characteristics of the priority audience. This is achieved by identifying the socio-demographic, geographic, and psychographic characteristics of your priority audience. You can also look at your priority audience's preferred communication channels here too. Let's go through some examples to help you. The socio-demographic characteristics of your priority audience include their sex or gender, age, language, religion, occupation, income, ethnicity, etc. On the other hand, the geographic characteristics of your target audience are their region, district, city, and whether or not they live in urban or rural settings. The psychographic characteristics of your priority audience include their needs and concerns, their hopes and aspirations, their values, their attitudes and opinions, their lifestyle, and their personality traits. When analyzing your priority audience's preferred communication channels, think about the channels that they use most frequently, the ones they trust the most, and the ones they use for general information, and the ones they use in case of an emergency. Step 4. Identify knowledge, attitudes, and practices. Once you've selected your priority audience, you need to understand the behaviors they currently practice and what they know and feel about the desired behaviors that will help the situation you are addressing. Remember that behaviors are not always rational. They are influenced by numerous factors that you need to consider when designing your disaster risk communication plan. The factors that shape individual behavior are called ideational factors. Affecting ideational factors through risk communication activities can lead to behavior change. In the next slide, we'll go through some of the questions you can ask to explore ideational factors and address them in your disaster risk communication plan. Here are some questions that will help you explore ideational factors. What does the audience know about the nature of the situation? What beliefs do the audience have about the situation? How does the audience feel about the situation? Does the audience feel at risk of being affected by the situation? Does the audience feel capable of engaging in risk reduction behaviors? If yes, to what degree? And if no, why? Does the audience feel capable of discussing the issue and advocating for protective behaviors? How capable do they feel? What are the audience's beliefs and attitudes towards the situation you are addressing? How is it currently being addressed? What are the audience's emotional reactions towards the situation? How does the audience see their role in relation to the issue? And finally, what level of support does the audience think it can get from communities, family members, friends to engage in risk reduction behavior? Step 5. Identify barriers and facilitators. Now that you've selected your priority audiences and know more about their current knowledge, attitudes, and practices, you need to identify what can support or hinder your audiences from behaving in the way you want them to. By doing this exercise, you can address your barriers and use your facilitators to promote the success of your disaster risk communication plan. Identifying barriers and facilitators can be achieved through desk review and primary research with your priority audience through interviews and focus group discussion. Don't forget to investigate gender-related barriers and facilitators as well to enhance the effectiveness of your plan. Let's look at some examples. If you're trying to affect a habit, one of the biggest barriers you could face is that some people are very comfortable doing things the way they've always been done. It may be very difficult for them to do things differently. However, there might also be individuals who already practice the desired behavior, and they could be used as role models to help encourage others. After having identified barriers and facilitators, you can move on to step 6. Consider audience segmentation. It is very possible that you may need to segment your audience into smaller groups. This is because an audience group may be composed of different subgroups with their own set of issues that need to be addressed through unique communication approaches. You should therefore assess your priority audience to see if members are similar enough to be reached by the same communication channels and to respond to the same activities and messages. To help you determine whether audience segmentation is necessary, you can ask the following questions. Are any audience members especially hard to reach? Are any audience members at higher risk? Do any audience members have different views or concerns? And finally, do any audience members need a different message? If you answered yes to any of those questions, you need to segment your audience into smaller groups. Step 7. Identify influencing audiences. In order to increase the effectiveness of your disaster risk communication plan and foster behavior change within your priority audience, you should identify and target influencing audiences. Influencing audiences are individuals who have influence on and can affect the practices, attitudes, and knowledge of priority audiences. Therefore, it is highly advised that you think about who influences or controls the decisions and behaviors of your priority audience. Influencing audiences can include family members, community leaders, religious organizations, etc. Here are some questions that can help you identify your influencing audiences. Who influences or controls the behavior of the priority audience? How do the influencing audiences influence the priority audience? What are the influencing audience's practices regarding the situation you are addressing? What are the influencing audience's attitudes, beliefs, and knowledge of the situation you are addressing? What are the potential barriers to involving influencing audiences? And finally, what are the potential benefits of involving influencing audiences? Step 8. Organize influencing audience information. After having identified your influencing audiences, conduct additional research to get more information on them and their relationship to the priority audience. Questions to ask include: how strongly do they influence the priority audience? Why would they encourage or discourage the desired behavior? How can they be reached? And finally, what behaviors do they encourage the priority audience to practice? Answering these questions can help you identify and target the most important influencing audiences. Activities and messages will have to be developed for the influencing audiences as well to help promote the behavior change of your priority audience. We have now reached the last step of audience analysis. Develop audience profiles. An audience profile is a paragraph that contains detailed information on your audience's current behaviors, motivations, emotions, values, and attitudes. It also contains information on age, income level, religion, sex, and geographic location. It should also highlight the audience's barriers to adopting the desired behaviors. Conducting an audience profile is crucial for you and your team to see your audience as real people with real needs, motivations, and desires. It will also help you design messages and activities that truly resonate with your audience and promote behavior change. It will also help you choose an approach that your audience is responsive to and is more likely to lead to the achievement of your objectives. Here is an example of an audience profile. As you can see, it is formatted as a story of an imagined audience member. I suggest you use the same approach, as this will really help you and your team to put yourself in your audience's shoes and devise a disaster risk communication plan that resonates with your audience and can promote behavior change. To read the example more closely, I've included a link below the video. Make sure you conduct an audience profile for each of your selected audiences. We've finally gone through all 9 steps for conducting audience analysis, including audience segmentation. To help you with your disaster risk communication plan, you can find an audience analysis checklist below this video. This will help ensure that you go through all 9 steps effectively. The suggested readings list also has resources that can support you when you conduct your own audience analysis and to have a little more detail on each of the steps. Thank you very much for joining me in Lesson 4 on understanding your audience. I hope you now have a clearer idea of how to conduct audience analysis and segmentation for your disaster risk communication plan. I hope to see you again soon.